Greetings, all. It is almost impossible to think that this semester is very close to the being finished. I hope that each of you has learned some things about curriculum design, and are now ready to move forward in developing your own curriculum and making your own curricular decisions. But before we dive into the intricacies of this foundational principles of curriculum design and effective instruction, let me remind you of something. Uh, Curriculum design isn't just about organizing topics or aligning content with standards. It's much more than that. It's about crafting a journey of learning that is both meaningful and transformative. Imagine, if you will, curriculum design is a blueprint of education. It shapes not only what students learn, but also how they learn it, and perhaps most importantly, why they learn it. A well-designed curriculum is like a roadmap that guides students through the complex terrain of knowledge and ensuring that they acquire not just information, but the skills and insights they need to apply this knowledge into the real world. Remember the words of the famous educator John Dewey. He said, "Education is not preparation for life. Education is life." So, in this light, curriculum design transcends the boundaries of mere academic instruction. It becomes a tool, really, for shaping our life experiences, for igniting curiosity, and really for nurturing the holistic development of each learner. As we embark on this journey today, keep in mind that curriculum that we design is more than a collection of subjects. It's the architect of future possibilities. It's our responsibility and privilege as educators to create curricula that don't just educate, but inspire, challenge, and empower students to excel beyond the classroom. So now let's take a closer look at this important topic. So we're going to start with the end in mind. What is it that I hope that you will be able to experience as a result of what we're doing today, or with this particular module? The objectives include exploring foundational principles of curriculum development, but really that's something we've been doing a good bit of the semester. Next, understand how learning experiences are selected based on educational objectives. Very, very, very critical. As I said in slide one, developing a curriculum is not just identifying content, but how are you going to deliver that content, and what resources are you going to be able to use so that your students also are able to master that content. And then we'll learn how to effectively organize these educational experiences. Uh, we'll examine key teaching principles that focus on feedback and structured instruction, and then compare these foundational concepts to modern teaching methods. Any good student of educational philosophy or curriculum and design, a serious student of educational history, thinking about the giants in our field. I'm going to share, I think, five or six different people with you because it you need to know who these people are as educators, but also you need to know how their influence has changed and it continues to change what is happening in today's school. You heard me mention John Dewey earlier. You see that he was born in 1859, died in 52. Uh, and he was really kind of the father of progressive education. He emphasized experiential learning and critical thinking. Learning by doing and educational reform were two of his key words. Maria Montessori. I mean, who hasn't heard of Montessori school? And if you've ever uh, been to one or taught in one or have children who go to a Montessori school, then you understand that it is very child centered. It's child centered to the point of letting them uh, do self directing. And the coach or the manager is there to kind of guide that and provide some insight. Next, we have a couple that were well known in the mid 20th century. First of all, Ralph Tyler, and he, of course, we've used some of his work, but he introduced the basic principles of curriculum and instruction. A very, very important work. Anytime you think about curriculum design, then Ralph Tyler will probably be amongst the discussion. In some way, he has influenced schools throughout the world. Uh, so he wrote the book Basic Principles of Curriculum and Instruction, and some of his key words include objectives-based approach and the Tyler rationale. Probably just as well known as Ralph Tyler is Benjamin Bloom. I mean, who really hasn't heard of Bloom's taxonomy? Now, there's been some fairly simple and recent strategies to try to update Bloom's taxonomy, and there are indeed some interesting works out there. But we'll wait and see if just how successful these people are in changing Bloom's taxonomy. But he is also very influential in talking about cognitive domains. The Vygotsky, it wasn't until more recently that his theories became uh, um, to be accepted, at least to be accepted on a broader scale, if you will. So his focus was on social interaction and cognitive development. You know, how do we get along with one another? How do we treat one another? Some are very shy, some others are not shy, and so what is it that someone might be contributing to the conversation, and that would influence then the professor's decision on how well maybe that they are grasping the concept of the Vygotsky, the social development theory and zone of proximal development. And finally, the last that we're going to talk about today is Jerome Bruner. And Bruner, he is not new to this class. In fact, you've read some things about him, I think. He talks about constructivism, sorry about that, and also the spiral curriculum. Uh, and so we have two men here that are very influential and certainly are appreciated for all the work that they've done. So let's take a look for a few minutes on some curriculum development and curriculum design. First of all, these modern trends, they are much more likely to be student-centered, obviously using technology, and whenever possible, small group interactions. That's not always possible, and in fact, sometimes people don't want their classes to be split up. They want to have this control, if you will, over their particular class. But modern trends include the work of Vygotsky certainly, and Ralph Tyler, really all the people that I just mentioned, because those people are really, if you don't at least acknowledge their presence, then you're really missing it, because they really do have a nice house and nice response to the giving. Okay, so now let's. So let's take a look at some learning objectives and their corresponding activities related to them. First objective, students will analyze the themes and character development in a piece of literature. Okay, that's pretty straightforward, right? So one of the activities related directly to that is the student would read a selected novel and be able to and participate in a Socratic seminar where students discuss and debate the themes and the characters using evidence from the text to support their analysis. And so the objective is that students will be able to analyze the theme and the character development. And so then they have an assignment related directly to that. The next one, students will be able to understand the principles of Newton's laws of motion and apply them to a real world scenario. So, an activity they have then is conduct a physics experiment in groups where students design and build their own Newton's cradle or balloon rockets, then report on how Newton's laws are demonstrated through their experiments. Uh, and you see how open this is. that they can build either a Newton's cradle or a balloon rocket, and then they have to decide which of the laws is being demonstrated, perhaps more than one. Um, Okay, and then the third objective here, students will be able to conduct basic statistical analysis and interpret data sets. So a corresponding activity, engage in a statistics project that involves collecting data through surveys or experiments, using statistical software to analyze the data, then process those findings through graphs and reports. So let's talk about structured instruction models. So, two key examples here, there's direct instruction and the flipped classroom model. Direct instruction is teacher centered, focusing on clear, concise teaching in a step by step format. This method is especially effective in teaching fundamental concepts or processes, as seen in subjects like math or language arts. On the other hand, the flipped classroom turns the traditional model on its head. Here, students first engage with the new material outside of class, often through videos or reading assignments. Classroom time is then devoted to applying this knowledge through discussions, problem solving sessions, or hands on activities. This approach encourages active learning and greater student engagement. If we would move on for just a bit, feedback loops in the classroom deal with continuous feedback, and it's crucial both for students and teachers. We have formative assessments like quizzes or short writing assignments that provide ongoing insights into student comprehension and progress. These really just are not for grading, but are tools to be used by teachers to adjust the strategies to help students to learn what they need to know. Similarly, student surveys give feedback on teaching effectiveness and student satisfaction, allowing for modifying the teaching practices. And finally, let's look at some real world applications. There are case studies. The first case studies we see direct instruction in a math high school class. The teacher uses a systematic approach to introduce new concepts, followed by guided practice and independent work. This structure has led to increased student understanding and better performance in assessments. The second case study talks about, or is used in the history classroom using the flipped classroom model. Students watch a lecture or videos at home and engage in group discussions and project work during the class. This approach not only deepens the students' understanding of historical events, but it also helps improve their critical thinking skills. So, three principles of structured instruction are feedback, and feedback are not just theoretical concepts, they're practical tools that, when applied effectively, can transform our teaching and significantly enhance our students' learning experience. So, as we progress, let's think about how we can incorporate these strategies into our own teaching practices for better educational outcomes. So, for the next few minutes, let's look at how traditional teaching methods and more modern teaching methods are related. You will see in the yellow circle that previously the idea of rote learning, rote memorization was used sometimes effectively for student learning. The drill and practice method, where as a former math teacher 50 years ago, sometimes we would have students to do 100 problems in order to test their understanding. But is 100 problems really necessary in order to test a student understanding of a particular content? But there was a lot of drill and practice previously, and as a result, many students did learn. Also, the traditional teaching method is very teacher centered, that the teacher talks more and is more interactive than anyone else in the classroom. And at the end of the day, usually the teacher is very tired and really just wants to go home and rest, but often has papers to grade. On the other side, more modern techniques would include collaboration, and that would include collaboration both with students and teacher, as well as collaboration between students. It's always good, I think, when students challenge one another in dealing with a particular content. Digital platforms, of course, the explosion, if you will, of technology in today's classroom has impacted virtually every part of the teaching. But I wonder, really, have digital tools made a significant impact on what is happening in the classroom? I would say to you yes and no. Yes, when the teacher is effective and understands how to use the particular content, and no, when the teacher does not know how to use what is he or she is trying to teach, and they use the digital tools more as an electronic textbook or similarly. Interactive media, very often we have virtual tools and other software that allows a student to enter a thought or an idea or an expression and then use those ideas to better understanding curriculum and curriculum design. Then in the middle, in the green, there are two techniques that have been used effectively 100 years ago and are still being used effectively today. The first is integration. And I'm not talking about integration of anything other than races or ethnicities. The thought of using the Socratic method sometimes, and I use the example of race or ethnicity because sometimes those adjectives, if you will, create different kinds of thoughts in each of us, depending upon our own particular ethnicity. And so it can be an example of something that can be used effectively to get students understanding. For example, here in the U.S., the ethnicity of African American and Caucasian European American, if you will, often draw a stark contrast about what students think about a particular content. And in reality, is the color of one's skin the most important factor in providing critical thinking? The Socratic method would be an interesting strategy toward that kind of discussion. Storytelling, on the other hand, is describing a particular event or a particular content or subject in a way that is both entertaining and compelling. And if a student can tell a story about a particular content or a particular idea, then they most surely do understand what is meant by storytelling. So, if we will, let's take a look for just a few minutes about the key, conclusion and reflection on what we have learned today. Some of the key takeaways. When you think about the lecture that you've listened to for the last 30 minutes or so, what are some of the key ideas and key concepts that you have learned? And how do those key concepts and key learning, how does that now impact your thinking or your work in the classroom? And if you say it doesn't really, then I would ask you, what did you get out of this course? Or most importantly, what do you hope to get out of future courses? Reflective questions. Open-ended questions encourage students to apply the learning to their future teaching. If you haven't yet learned how to ask an open-ended question, I would suggest that perhaps you either go back and read your notes, or a different way, not necessarily easier, but a different way, is that you can go outside and find something that's growing, a flower or whatever, and ask a question like, what would happen if this flower was planted in a different location? For example, if it's in the shade, what would happen if it was in the sunlight? Or another question is, why do particular birds go south, at least in the U.S., during the winter? And what causes them, or what triggers their process at some point to start thinking about their home? And then finally, invitation for discussion. If we were virtual, if we were synchronous, then I would invite each of you to participate in a classroom discussion relative to the content that we've just discovered. So in thinking about curriculum, one of the things that I thought might be helpful was to give you some sort of graphic organizer that would provide you maybe a bit of content or a bit of reflection, allowing a broader understanding of exactly what curriculum means and does and is. First of all, you can see that the red letters spell out the word curriculum. So it's really to keep you motivated and remembering, thinking about curriculum. First word that I thought about was content. It is so important that the content that you're teaching match the objectives, and everything aligns with everything that's supposed to be aligned. Then the second word is understanding. How do we know if our students know what we're trying to teach? And if the answer is we don't know, then why in the world are we not providing that answer to our students? The third is regulations. There are always governmental regulations that deal with curriculum. let me suggest to you that you abide by those uh, curriculum. However, keep in mind that it's not a forever thing, that the regulations often change. Um, Relevance, make sure that the things that are being taught are real and that have meaning to the child's life. Integration would mean linking all the different lessons together, if possible, to see how can we teach a particular content by using what's going on in math class, what's going on in language arts, what's going on in English, and so that students will see that the classes they're taking are really not independent silos, but they are related to one another. Then the next C is competencies. How do we teach a student how to be competent? Well, that's a bit of a challenge for sure. However, I think that it's worth pursuing. Up to date, it is one of the biggest mistakes that we can make is to have a curricula that is not up to date, and so keeping it up to date is really a full time job. Literacy. So we have all kinds of literacy, but primarily here I'm talking about uh, um, language literacy as well as mathematical literacy. And sometimes people tend to forget those that there are two different types, and perhaps someday someone will be checking into your particular place. Unbiased is so critical that our work be unbiased. For example, again, here in the U.S., we had a civil war more than 100 years ago, and people felt it was their moral obligation to provide teaching as they do. And so, let me add just a few comments here at the end, not only of this particular lecture, but as we near the end of this course. Um, when you think of curriculum, uh, you need to make sure that you go way beyond content. You need to make sure that you go way beyond mapping. You need to make sure that you go way beyond instructional technologies and instructional pedagogy. When you think about curriculum, you need to think about a quilt or a puzzle or something that can be viewed with many parts, but all the parts go together to make the whole. And so when we think about curriculum, for sure it's about content, for sure it's about pedagogy, for sure it's about the experience that students have, for sure it's about creating formative and summative assessments to evaluate or assess the student's understanding. But all of these things independently are not curricula. All these things together do go to make up a curriculum. Uh, Sometimes uh, one of the biggest mistakes that, especially new teachers and those who are training teachers, fail to realize is that considering assessments without keeping the objectives at the forefront will lead to experience for students that is confusing and that students will not necessarily see why they are doing what you've asked them to do. And so, the assignment that we have for this particular week is that I want you to think of a word that is in the word curriculum, or that starts with one of the letters in the word curriculum, and then write two sentences that illustrate uh, that particular concept. As an example, uh, the letter C for that begins curriculum. If I use this example, this picture of that I took a few weeks ago when I was in Luxor and went up in a hot air balloon. Um, if you look at the picture, there are many things to be seen. First of all, the contour or the highs and lows of the earth below. That is something that you will experience as a teacher or instructional leader. Sometimes students are ready, if you will, to understand, and sometimes they are not so ready. Some of them will come to you very well rested and fed, and others will come to you perhaps even misbehaving sometimes in order to gain your attention. But let me give you show you perhaps something that will help you even more understanding what your assignment is for this particular week. So I want us to look at three words, beginning with the first three letters in the word curriculum. Content, of course, content is really what we teach. It encompasses specific subjects, topics, and material that students are expected to learn, and it forms the core of their educational program. It's really essential in curriculum design that if you don't know where you're going, then any road will take you there. And so the content must be defined very early on, and the scope and the depth of knowledge to be imparted to the students should be measured or should be known very early on as well. And secondly, understanding. How will you measure the student understanding of particular content? Of course, there's assessments, various types of assessments, formative and summative assessments, but we often think of those as paper pencil. But formative assessments can be much greater as well as summative assessments can be. For example, in summative assessments, you could have a Coke can and turn on the faucet and guess how long it would take for the Coke can to fill up with water. So really, it's measuring the understanding of students' knowledge related to the particular curricula that you're using. And finally, regulations. You can always count on regulations. When I was instructional supervisor in a district, meaning that I was leading all the curriculum and design, I would ask myself the question: how can we set up a curricula that is legislative proof? That whatever happens in our body of regulators, that we're going to continue to do the right thing. But you have to be careful because there are often regulations that spell out what and who and when and some other things as well. So make sure that you do pay attention to the regulations.